Colin?
He's on.
Okay.
Hi, Lynn.
For purposes of voting, Jim Hardy is not present at this meeting, just so everybody understands. He's listening by phone, but he can't vote on any of the matters. So there's 6 members present technically, even though Jim's on the phone.
Thanks for the warm feeling, Kevin.
I can feel the Florida sunshine, Jim.
Good comeback.
Thanks for the warm feeling, Kevin. I'd like to compliment Joe Gazowski on how beautiful he looked.
How many Manhattans have you had?
That's good, Joe.
None.
Are we ready?
Yep.
All right, I'll call the Wyoming County Industrial Development Agency Board meeting to order. And for the record, we have all members present except James Hardy, who is attending by telephone but would be not eligible to vote, although he will be listening to the meeting. We also have Mr. Daly, our special project officer, I guess we'll call him, who is also participating by telephone. Okay. Our first order of business is to review the board minutes meeting from December 12th. Everyone has a copy. Are there any additions or corrections or any discussion about those minutes?
We'll accept the minutes as stated.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we also have the monthly financial report. I invite Robin to highlight anything that she feels would be unusual for the members.
Okay, thank you, Mark. We started the month with $712,884 in cash on hand, $2,109,000 in CDs and investments. We earned in our normal interest on CDs and bank interest. We received our second of our biannual payments for our management fees from the BAC and the Business Center. Under our expenses, nothing out of the ordinary. Our typical payroll and our marketing was for the chamber, for the MOU we have with the chamber. And we ended the month with $720,969 cash in the bank and $2,110,625 in invested funds.
Is there any discussion on this report? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve the report as submitted.
I will just accept it as submitted.
Do I have a second? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, and today we also have the Wyoming County Industrial Development Agency Investment Report. We all have a copy.
We are required to put this up on the parish reporting system. I wanted to share with the board that we did some treasury bond investing this year that performed very, very well for us. So if you can see how we've done with the CDs and so forth, but the total interest income for the year down on the very bottom is $47,348.04. So overall, our investments were performed
Where
very
did you
well.
find that figure, Mr. Pierce?
Right, and
Oh, I see.
last
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and this is a report that's required to be posted on the Paris reporting to the ABO and the state controller's office.
All right. If there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion to approve the investment report.
Move it.
Second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. And Mr. Pierce, let me turn over the meeting to you for discussion of 3A, the Invenergy, I can't say that word, proposed Orangeville battery storage project.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have with us Ryan Hicks from Orange, for the Orangeville, representing the Orangeville project from Invenergy here. Ryan is prepared to entertain comments or questions. In your board packet, you will find a summary of what is being proposed in terms of a pilot arrangement with the Wyoming County IDA. So this project has a total capital cost of $11,680,000. It's essentially going to be 12 prefabricated steel containers that are going to be holding batteries that have a 20 megawatt of capacity. In typical fashion with our renewable energy projects, host agreements are usually performed before developers come to the IDA if they are seeking IDA assistance on this project. So the host agreement has been worked out with the town of Orangeville. To summarize that, it's about the middle down on the page. The host payment is going to be $5,900 per megawatt with a 2.5% increase every year starting after the first year. So if you calculate that out, it'll be $5,900 times 20 megawatt, which is the total project in terms of capacity. It equates to $118,000 for the first year. And again, the 2.5 will be added to that the following year. There's also as part of the community host agreement, a one-time payment to the town for the youth and recreation program in the amount of $35,000. We met, myself and Robin Marshallek met earlier this week with Mr. Hicks to discuss the community host agreement as well as the proposed pilot for our portion of the project. So in our discussion that we had with Mr. Hicks, he indicated that to make this project work, that they need to be in the neighborhood of $7,000 in total per megawatt. As you can see from the sheet, 5,900 of that is already going to the town. So he's proposing to the IDA that the pilot be a representation of $1,100 annually. And that will be shared with all the taxing jurisdictions, including the town of Orangeville. They get a piece of that on top of their host agreement. The last paragraph describes typically how the renewable energy projects have been structured in this county, where 80% of them, of the value on the megawatt is taken by the host agreements, and then 20% is then shared with the taxing jurisdictions. The current proposal, as described, comes up a little shy on that, and so we wanted to bring that to the board's attention. It essentially equates to an 84 community host agreement, 16% pilot. So we wanted to bring it up for a discussion with the board. It does deviate somewhat from our normal processes on approving these projects. I guess the other thing I would add, this is a battery storage project, and it typically does not put a lot of extra strain on the government services. Once it's built, there's not going to be a lot of activity at the site. They're not putting stress on roads and a variety of things. So with that, I would just open it up for discussion on the part of the board.
In the negotiations for the host agreement, were they not aware of our 80-20? I don't know if we want to call it a requirement, but what we were expecting.
This would be Invenergy's second project in Wyoming County, actually third, isn't it? If you include the wind turbines, Ryan?
I don't know if you're counting Jaber or not, but it's third.
Yeah, so there's been 2 wind turbine projects at an 80-20 split. There's also been the Jaber project that this board approved with a community host agreement, 80 and then 20 split. And this is the one that's currently in front of you. So, Ryan has drove a long ways to offer himself up for some questions. So I would, if the board wants to direct some questions to Ryan, he's open to taking those.
Well, I think you heard the question, Brian. Were you not aware of this 80-20 requirement?
So myself and the other individuals on the development team for Orangeville were aware of the 80-20 that's been done in the past. That's something that we've certainly been cognizant of. And when we finally came to a conclusion with the town on the HCA, it was immediately apparent to us that it was going to be like stretching a project like this, the budget of it, in order to meet that 80-20. As far as whether it was discussed formally with the town, like in the same breath as the HCA, I don't think it was ever brought up, at least in my presence by Sue or Mr. DiMatteo, the town attorney. I think this is my interpretation of it, but I think they kind of think of them as separate agreements that need to be negotiated individually. And again, I am aware that the proposal that I've put in front of you is not typical, given the 80-20 that you've done in the past on these projects. We really want this project to get built, and we're pushing to get it done. It's just tight, given the technology and the constraints in the industry right now, financially, to make more than $7,000 a megawatt work. That's just kind of where these lithium projects are at. So I've humbly requested that you, I guess, make an exception to your typical rate.
Mr. Chairman. As a supervisor from the town of Arcade, our town board on Monday evening approved a host community agreement for the wind turbine project located in the town, the Alley Cat, which is, there's 13 turbines in Arcade, and then the rest are scattered throughout Allegheny and Cattaraugus County. In our discussion, we had no negotiation about the IDA's pilot agreement. It was strictly with the town of Arcade. So I would believe that you're talking about two separate conversations. And keep in mind that eventually there'll be discussion here again regarding the Arcade project.
If I may, also, from a purely financial and technology perspective, this body may find it difficult to reconcile a consistent split for a pilot agreement when comparing different energy production and storage technologies. A battery project and I had a similar conversation when negotiating the HCA with Orangeville. Sume had expressed her interest in a HCA that matched the wind project's HCA. And just at a very fundamental level, the fact that a lithium technology project, the revenue streams in a project like that are just vastly different than a wind project. And so when comparing pilots on a project-to-project basis, as you see them, because I'm aware that in Wyoming County you have quite a number of renewable projects being put forth in front of you. The 80-20 may become, you may find that developers need flexibility in that 80-20. I don't know if you have other storage projects proposed, but.
Well, the beneficiary here is the town, and my first impression is the town is overreaching. And we do not have a seat at the table when you're making these concessions, to use that word, and I just don't think it's appropriate for us to be making this decision when you've already, as I understand, already have a signed agreement.
Right. I will also mention, just for the history of this project's development, that we had postponed discussion of the pilot agreement until the terms of the HCA were concrete, to show that we were trying to be flexible and meeting the town's needs. this project's impact is very local compared to like a wind project, for example. The acre footprint isn't going to be demanding services from all over the county. And so it may be more appropriate that a host community agreement at a local level is more generous than a county-wide agreement.
Could you say that again? I didn't understand that.
So for a wind project, for example, just for the sake of comparison, you have turbines spread across the landscape, multiple townships, multiple jurisdictions, maybe multiple fire districts, et cetera. For a storage project, the resources that are needed to serve that type of project are both less and more local than, for example, a wind project. And so, given that the demands of the project are more local, it may make more sense to have a more favorable agreement with the local township than the county-wide services.
And you feel you're in a position to be basically bargaining on our behalf without any input from us?
No, I don't presume anything. I've simply proposed what I believe is in this project's budget.
Does anybody else have anything they want to say about this?
Points well taken, Chairman.
Well, is it possible that you would go back and talk to the town again and make this, I don't know how many dollars are actually involved, but ask the town for some concession to get this done?
I would be open to proposing that on your behalf, I suppose. I don't.
It seems to me this is kind of a windfall for Orangeville. They're not going to have to do anything once this thing is built. And I don't see any reason at all for us to create a precedent here. And we're going to be doing this on every project. And we have a history of doing it this way.
Yes.
And as you can tell from my remarks, I'm not very happy about it.
And I can bring this up with Sume, if that would be in the interest of the board.
Well, this is just one member of the board. I'm just telling you what I think. So.
I also would just mention, as far as communication during the negotiations of the HCA, I didn't presume to contact the county and this body for the town of Orangeville. As a developer, we sort of leave that negotiation of how the HCA and the pilot interact to the county and the town. But like I said, I can reach out on your behalf if you would like.
Jim, wasn't there a project similar to this proposed a few years ago? And did we get to this point at that time, or?
It's actually Invenergy's the contractor on that project.
Right.
And I said it was the Java Energy Storage Project, and it was approved at a host agreement of $4,000 for the community and $1,000 for the pilot. So it was an 80-20.
I guess the thing that concerns me the most is the fact that we would be setting a precedent.
Yep.
Because this project in Arcade, while it's not the scope of the other projects in the county, it's still, there's some money attached to it.
Sizable.
Yeah. So, and given the history of the IDA and the fact that these wind projects are a funding stream for economic development in the county, that's what it was intended to do. I don't want to see us cut ourselves short.
And I think there are other host agreements that are being negotiated at this time. And I certainly don't want to encourage what's proposed here. Unless there's some awfully good reason that I'm not aware of.
I think we were expecting the 80-20 split, regardless, so.
Well, I think it might be a good idea for you to, for us to put this on the table it and look at it again next month and see if the town wants to rethink their position on this or the company.
Yeah.
And I would entertain a motion to that effect if there's no further discussion.
I move that motion, Chairman.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Thank you, Ryan, and we're not trying to give you a hard time, but this, you know where we're coming from.
Yeah, I understand the president.
Okay, Jim, 3B, sales tax exemption for Silver Lockin.
Yeah, in your packet is a quick little email from Mike Bellamy, the owner of Silver Lockin. As you may recall, when the IDA board approved this project, it was a project that was going to be phased in 2 different phases, with the first phase buying kind of a minimal amount of units to see how everything would fly. And if they performed well, that he would go into phase 2 and purchase some additional units. His first year was, bye Ryan, thank you. His first year turned out very well with what he had there. He had a boathouse, he had a tree tent, he had a log cabin, and he had the lodge. He wants to buy some additional units, and he's already been pre-planned at the local community to do that. And so in order for him to realize the sales tax benefits that were originally approved for him, he would like the board to consider extending the sales tax exemption for the calendar year 2020.
Now, these units are these tent type things on a
Yes, the glamping units.
glamping, that's the
Yes.
word I'm looking for, the glamping unit.
This isn't like a motel unit, is it?
I think
Each
there's
one
a-
separate?
That's right.
There's a
Individual.
picture along the bottom,
Sure.
it's kind of hard to see which is
Yep.
which. I think it's the third from the right.
Yeah, he describes the units on the ad as well. Tree tents, tiny homes, log cabins, cottages. This was approved as a tourism destination project, and like I said, it performed very well for him last year.
The gentleman's very successful previously, anything he's ever done. In my opinion, Silver Lake definitely needs something. I would like to see this carry on. I'm talking my personal.
Where's this located?
Off of Traver Road,
On the which side?
on the
West
west
side.
side. of
West
it.
side, okay.
You won't see it off West Lake Road,
Mm-hmm.
Kind of right across.
right across from Klein's Farm.
Yeah.
Look right down.
Okay.
That's a town road, Blacktop Road. You can drive right down by it.
Yeah, I've driven down there a couple times.
Any further discussion? Do I hear a motion to approve the request?
I'd like to move that, Chairman.
Second day as well.
All in favor?
Aye.
And item 3C,
Annually, the Wyoming County IDA enters into an agreement with the Wyoming County Business Center, Inc. for administrative services. As the board is aware, the Business Center is a local development corporation that does the entrepreneurship training program, micro lending, and business attraction marketing. They don't have any staff, so the IDA staff administers that for a total of $20,000 annually. So we're looking for authorization to enter into that agreement.
any discussion? Something we've done right along, is that correct?
That's correct.
It's the same as before.
All right.
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Jim, your report.
Yeah, just some quick updates on some projects. The hotel project in Arcade is moving forward. The hotel developer is working on putting their financing together and finalizing their drawings that they need for the bank for their appraisal. We're expecting to see a signed land purchase agreement either by tomorrow or early next week on a cost that was previously approved on by this board. And they are intending to put the RFP out later in late January for bid, and they're hoping to break ground in May. So things are looking really well. Not to mention, we were able to get the zoning changed for the Village of Arcade. Everything's good there. Plus, we got that $60,000 grant that was provided by National Fuel to extend the gas lines down to the hotel as well as our other 28-acre development site. The other project that I met with a company in Sheldon who's considering an expansion project. So we talked about what the IDA might be able to do to encourage that project to move forward. They're still putting their numbers together. I met with a agricultural business in Gainesville that's also developing plans for an expansion. The project might be approaching enough in terms of capital investment where we could bring in the state and possibly look at a state grant for that as well. So that's something we can talk about later as it becomes a little more committed. The town of Bennington, Duke Energy have executed their community host agreement. This is for the solar project called Niagara Solar in the town. It's a 20 megawatt unit. The deal there is $3,500 per megawatt with $2,800 going to the community host agreement and $700 for the pilot. And the math says that's an 80-20 split. So that is they're asking for a 35-year pilot. The board has already authorized us to hold a public hearing on this project. We're just waiting for the community host agreements to get done. So we're in the position now of preparing our deviation notices to the taxing jurisdictions, as well as preparing the public hearing notice. So we'll be shooting the board a note about when those things are going to happen. And if you want to attend, you're certainly welcome to. The town of Pike and Delaware River Solar project are close to finalizing their community host agreement. That's a 12.5 or 12.8 megawatt project. It appears with that project that it's going to be $5,000 in total per megawatt, with $4,000 going to the town of Pike and $1,000 for the pilot. Again, an 80-20 split. The next project that we think is going to come in for solar is located in the town of Castile, and it's known as the Silver Lake Solar Project. It will be a 20 megawatt project. We don't have an application in hand on that, but I have had some informal discussions with counsel for the project that's representing the town, or I'm sorry, the developer. Let's see, the Alley Cat project, Doug had mentioned earlier. We did have an application from them. It's not quite final yet. We were waiting on the community host agreement to get kind of firmed up with Arcade. And Doug, do you have anything you want to share?
It's the same agreement that was negotiated by Farmersville, which was the most lucrative. Now, whether they all can follow, I don't know. You know what, Jim? I don't care what the rest of them do. I worry about the town of Arcade.
And they're talking 13. And originally it was 14. They were talking about.
13 was the number Monday night.
Okay.
$500,000 a year for the next 20 years.
How tall are those? 400?
Well, it depends. See, now depends on how the application that they made to the state siting commission will make a determination on how tall the turbines are and how many and in what place they go. So it could change.
Are they 2 megawatt, Doug?
It'd be bigger than that.
They're bigger than that, or 2.5, I think.
2.5.
Yeah. But they've got the locations selected, but they won't know where they can go until the state siting commission. And there's a process, and there's 2 local people that are selected, and whether they'll be selected from the town of Arcade or from one of the other towns is up to the state.
Yeah. I do know that Allegheny County IDA did hold their public hearings for their projects because the host agreements are essentially done for Centerville and Rushford. I went to one of the public hearings just then kind of get a feel for what might be coming our way, and So they're ready to move forward there. Cattaraugus County, I understand, might be a little bit different,
Well,
different.
there've been this whole series of informational meetings and workshop meetings. And there was a sum of money that was set aside for each town to pay the town attorney to attend the meetings. And so Jim Wujik is the town attorney, and he's gone to every meeting. And he gave a report to the town board Monday night. And he was in full agreement with the host community agreement. He actually helped to prepare it. So, and unlike the civil unrest that occurred in several of the other towns in the project, this one, I've still yet to have, there may have been one or two people who have asked me a question about it, but the thing that makes it so good for us is the turbines are so far off the road that people don't even, they're not anywhere near habitation, so.
Well, as soon as those host agreements are signed and final, make sure we get a copy of those if you would as a supervisor.
I'm waiting for them. I signed ours, we signed for Arcade, but they have to send theirs to Invent. When it's done, I'll make sure that.
Because then we can move forward with preparing our public hearing as well. I did follow up after our last meeting. There was a discussion, as you may recall, about the wind turbine projects up in Weathersfield, and the company wanted to come in and refurbish them and get them back online since only one of them is producing any power. So the board consensus was, let's find out more. Why don't you have them send in an application? So they have in their hands, their attorney for the project has in their hands the IDA application. Have not seen it come back yet. So we'll hold off making any discussion or decision on that, but just wanted to let you know that was followed up on as well. The last thing I wanted to mention as part of my report is workforce development is a key thing for economic development as well. I don't know if anybody got an email this morning from the governor, but he did a press release announcing a release of 3.4, I think it was, or $3.6 million in workforce development funds to several of the regional economic development councils. We encouraged our manufacturers to get engaged with GCC on an application. So GCC is getting a piece of that action, and the companies that will be benefiting from that include Press-Light Electric and Arcade, as well as Creative Food Ingredients in Perry and Market Tubing in Wyoming. So we're getting a piece of that $175 million that was in the budget a couple of years ago. So that's, like I said, that's going to be coming here. So with that, I would leave it as my report unless anybody has any questions.
All right, Mr. Daly, are you with us, sir?
Yes, I am. I got two items. The first is an update on the Wyoming County Purchase the Development Rights Program through the Ag and Farmland Protection Board. Some of you know that Emmerlings got a tremendous amount of money from New York State. Their offering of acreage through the Genesee Valley Conservancy was so attractive to New York State Ag and Markets that they asked Genesee Valley Conservancy to go back to Emmerlings and ask them to split their application into two applications. And they do that because the maximum you can get per application is $2 million. So the Genesee Valley Conservancy got a hold of us. And we said, of course, and that's fantastic. And they split the application, and Emmerlings got $2 million on application one, and they got $898,000 on application two for their acres they're going to put into. They're selling the development rights in perpetuity to New York State. But the next one that happened, and some of you may have already seen this, but not a lot of people, is that Armson Farms, it's in Covington, and some of it's up there in York also. But the Armson Farms, their acreage was appraised, and the state's going to offer them $2 million for their acreage. So we had a third one in this last round, Baker Brook in Attica, but there was some disagreement over a low evaluation on some of their land. It was actually land they put up in Genesee County. So we're not sure what will happen there. That's really, if it goes ahead, there's going to be a serious discussion between Genesee Valley Conservancy and Baker Brook people. So that isn't bad. Smith Gall's got all their money. Kleins are in the queue to get their money. True Farms are going to get their money. And, who's the big Sweet Farm? And so they're just waiting to go through the process. And now we've got these two other farms getting a lot of money. So very successful. The other thing is an update on the census. You're going to see a lot about this, and New York State's afraid it's going to lose at least one representative in Congress because of the outflow of so many people. And of course, we want to get this done right. New York State came out with a grant, and basically we put in a letter of intent saying, yeah, we would like to do an application to get a grant. So we haven't seen the final application, but the numbers that they basically promised to Wyoming County is $70,400 to promote people filling out the census correctly. And census is going to be, you can do it online or you can call. So I'm working with libraries, I'm working with the Chamber of Commerce. We're going to put together a coalition of people to get it out there. Certainly get to work with the Cornell Co-op because a lot of this is to get the population that's the hardest to count. And that might be some of the areas in the villages, people who normally don't respond to things. And the other, of course, would be the migrant farm workers. And we got it. This is all confidential, and it's something that we can get taken care of. But that's it. That's my report.
All right, thank you. Are there any other, is there any other business that anybody wishes to consider? If not, our next meeting is scheduled for February 20th at 2:30. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Go ahead, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. Robin,